Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Game Pass Grab Bag, your weekly podcast reviewing games in the Game Pass collection. Bring you 3 unique perspectives of varying skill range. I am the one surviving this tide, Andrew. With me, the one who's drowning in the Darktide, Keith.
Hello.
And the one who's here. I don't know, I couldn't think of an intro for you. Aaron, thank you for joining us again.
That was great. That was, again, I feel like you've screwed me over on these intros in the past. I just don't think you're really bringing the energy for me, and that really kind of bums me out. So, but thank you for that. That was great.
The one who uses a lot of Tide in his laundry, Aaron.
I'll accept it.
And this week, I picked the game. This week, we played Warhammer 40k Darktide by Fat Shark. Warhammer 40k Darktide is a 4v horde first-person shooter where you are playing one of 4 classes that are prisoners on a ship that you are recruited from the Imperium? I don't know Warhammer lore. I'm just going to go into that. But you were prisoners on a ship. The ship gets taken over. You're recruited into the army because a planet is taken over by the chaos. So you were basically sent on suicide missions to prove your worth. There we go. But starting off, since I already kind of pointed it out, I want to ask you guys, what's your guys' knowledge with Warhammer 40k?
Nothing that you just said. And
yeah.
Now everything that you just said.
All right, so we are a panel of experts. Here we go.
I know it's sad. It's sad. There's a lot of sad.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you say that. Like, I always know I would be into the tabletop Warhammer 40k. I know a lot of people that play it, and every time they describe me, like, that game sounds awesome. But I know it costs a lot of money, and I'm like, I don't want to focus. I don't want to spend a bunch of money on that. But I've always felt that way. I've played a good amount of Warhammer 40k games, and every time I'm like, this universe is depressing. I feel like everyone just wants to kill you. There's just misery, death, and darkness in every corner. And Warhammer 40k Darktide is exactly that.
Yeah, it's a lot of browns, a lot of concrete. I don't think I've seen in any Warhammer anything. So I've obviously seen some versions of the tabletop games. Obviously, multiple video games have been made at this point, including a few that have been on Game Pass over the years here. I don't think I've seen a single vegetation. I haven't seen a tree, a bush, a piece of grass. I've seen a lot of smog and sadness, and that is it. There's not one tree. Just put one tree.
Just copious amounts of sadness.
Yeah.
Just sprawled everywhere.
That's it.
Don't look at that corner. There's sadness there.
That is, if I were to get into Warhammer lore right now, the biggest question I would come in having is, where are the trees? Just where are the bushes? Is there not one? Because that to me is what brings the sadness.
I'll write the glossary of all vegetation in Warhammer right now. And done.
Yeah. The end. Finished.
But anyway, I will start with this. So, as I said, Warhammer 40k Darktide is a 4v horde game. And for me, this was a game. We've covered a couple like 4v horde style games. This one actually might be my favorite. It has a really good looter shooter aspect to it. It has really good RPG elements to it, class building. I actually had a lot of fun with it. And it actually has a half decent story. Well, I don't want to say half decent. The cutscenes I thought were cool. They're very sad, as Aaron said, but I at least thought like graphically it was really cool looking. So yeah, this is a game for me. I played a lot of it single player, and I still thought it was a lot of fun.
So, I think on the sheer, I like the style of the 4v horde games. It's what I tend to gravitate towards with, especially in Wartide. A lot of run and gun. It's not a lot of strategy. It's not a lot of slow playing things. It's just get your best guns to do your most explosions and most damage and get in there and do the heck out of that thing. So I absolutely do like it in that aspect. I don't know that I loved all of Warhammer, at least when I was playing it solo player, because I think, unlike apparently Aaron, I just had a much different experience, and I just kept getting destroyed over and over and over again. So it's a fun time, and I would pick it up and I would play it with friends, but I don't necessarily know that I would say it's an overall like must game, but it is a game. It's worth checking out if you really like the genre, especially.
Yeah, it's a game. I think it's got a lot of pitfalls there. Andrew's kind of glowing review of it being very good RPG elements. I think a lot of that stuff is lacking. Obviously, we'll get into that here in a little bit. I think it's probably important to note, Andrew, I think you were much more into, what those Left 4 Dead games, which this obviously takes a lot from. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I never really played I've played a very little bit amount of Left 4 Dead, and obviously it has a massive cult following in it. I feel like if
Did
you
you ever
are
play Back 4 Blood?
No, I never played that really either. I don't even know if I
geez.
downloaded it, truthfully. So I think if you're a fan of those games, you'd be a fan of this. I'm not, so I'm kind of coming into it at a completely new stance coming into it. But it's still a game. I still had fun with it. It's still a fun game. I would still go back and play this game. But I think the fact that I don't have that kind of backbone because I was too busy playing Call of Duty, I think it does hold it back from being like a great game for me.
Man, so I can't believe, so you've never really played too many of the style of this game? I find that very surprising.
Yeah, I think if I remember at the time, Left 4 Dead was a PC heavy game. We never really had a good gaming PC for one, and then growing up, and then for two, it eventually made its way onto Xbox. But again, at that time, I was way more interested in playing Call of Duty than I ever was at playing Left 4 Dead.
Which had zombies, which is kind of like it.
Yeah, it's not the same thing. But I know I had seen you play it, and I probably picked up. I would say if I were just off the top of my head guessing how many hours of Left 4 Dead I've played in my life, whether it's Left 4 Dead 1 or 2, I'm going to say a total maybe 6 hours. So very, very little amount of Left 4 Dead.
Okay.
I feel like this gets me every time because I swear Left 4 Dead was on PlayStation, or PlayStation 2 at least.
I mean, it definitely made its way onto Xbox.
It was in the 360 area when it came when it came to the Xbox. Yeah. So
yeah, but 360 was like it was somewhere
PS3.
between PS2 and PS3.
Yeah, that would have been PS3 era.
So I don't know. I swear I always remember playing it on my PlayStation 2, but I did play Left 4 Dead back in the day, and I didn't play as much Back 4 Blood when it came out, but I don't know. Overall, I liked those games, but I think I kind of see what you're saying is that at certain times it didn't really scratch much of an itch for me. At least Wartide didn't, I should say. Darktide.
See, I always think it's funny when people talk about Left 4 Dead 2, it's always like, best game ever. And don't get me wrong, it was good because it was the game that I think defined this genre of playstyle. But like, I feel like going back to it, I would be so bored with it because there wasn't much progression. And like, it sucks. I feel so tainted now of just, when I play a game, I need to be rewarded. And that's what I've been liking about Darktide. We'll get into it, obviously, as I said, with the RPG elements, which Aaron disagrees with, but let's get this started with the story. As I said, you start off as a prisoner, you create a character, you have 4 classes you can pick from. Veteran, which is mostly focused on ranged weapons. You have the Psyker, which is kind of like a mage, for people who don't quite know Warhammer lore. I think that's the easiest description. Then you have the Zealot, which I think originally was called the Priest, but I know in a recent patch they reworked a lot of the classes, and they're now called the Zealot. But in the achievements, it says, as the priest, do this. So I think they kind of changed it. But the Zealot kind of is a little bit more melee focused. And then you have the Ogren, which is a massive ogre-type character, who is kind of like a tank. But you could play different styles with each one of these characters. You create a backstory, which I do not understand why. I forgot to look up if there was a reason. But you're literally picking what homeworld did you come from.
For sweet RPG elements, obviously.
I guess, but they don't even reference it. As far as I could tell, it doesn't look like your dialogue changes. But yeah, you can change what homeworld you came from, what was your upbringing, and like these kind of little different things. But it's like, it didn't say like, oh, this will give you extra health or this will make your melee stronger.
Sounds like the RPG elements might be lacking a little bit. Interesting.
Well, the class building is interesting. So when you pick one of these 4 characters, it does a tutorial, which is also very story driven, which I liked and enjoyed. But like as I said, you are a prisoner on a ship. You're about to be transported to a planet to be executed, possibly. But you say, I'm loyal to the Emperor, and I always have been. They don't believe you, of course. But the ship gets attacked, you get free, and you escape with some of the survivors, and they recruit you into the army to keep returning to this planet and fight the chaos that is spreading around on the planet. Did you guys actually even understand the story when you were playing this?
No. But I honestly, I don't think you need to. And yes, it is well apparent when you're playing this game. This game probably makes a whole lot more sense if you have a general grasp of the Warhammer series.
Which I have a general grasp.
Yeah, and that's kind of it too. Like, I know that the Emperor is kind of the godlike figure throughout the whole series. I'm aware of the Space Marines.
Chaos is kind of like a zombie corruption that infects people.
Yeah, so I'm generally aware of some of that stuff, but even if you don't, this is just, again, lacking in the RPG element. So the story isn't overly important for the enjoyment of the game. It just isn't, and there's not a lot happening there. The cutscenes are fine. I know you were speaking a little bit more glowing on them before, but
I thought they were cool.
They're fine. They don't really do a whole lot. I mean, what part of it was cool? They talk to each other.
I thought graphically it was cool, and I thought they do because they would do some character introductions. Like anytime you leveled up, you would unlock some certain shops, and they kind of do a quick cutscene, kind of explaining the shop and the character kind of behind it. And I was like, this is kind of fun. But I will say they did start to get depressing because literally every cutscene is just people threatening that they want you executed and that you suck and you need to prove yourself or we're gonna kill you right away. And it's just like, all right, this is sad. Like, can somebody at least just give me a compliment here?
I don't know if sad is the word. We're just like, I go back to, I don't know how many different games. You're saving the world and you're doing all of these things, and everyone's just like, boy, you're the worst person in the world. All right, cool. Well, I'll just go risk my life again for you and everyone here on this planet. But it's cool, yeah. Just talk crap about me. And I don't know. It's a video game trope just in general. So I can't.
I think you're just used to it because we're always talking bad about you. So
well, I mean that
in general for you're just like, this is like normal life for me.
Yeah, but I'm also not bringing all of that much value. So like it's mostly well deserved for me.
So somebody's like, Keith, you're a piece of crap. You're like, I mean, yeah, I guess so.
I mean, I've
not
met
wrong.
myself, so like, yeah, probably.
I guess that's a good point.
You make a valid argument. I can't argue with you there. But I do agree, Aaron. It is a means to an end. Because also too, I at least like the environment, how it was set up of you being on this cathedral-esque ship. It's like essentially a floating city that's also like a cathedral. But like how the hub world is kind of designed, you go up to these missions and you're thrown. I always did quick play because quick play gives you bonus like 10% XP and rewards. So I'm just like, yeah, why wouldn't I pick quick play? So I will say I agree with you there. And as far as the story goes, it does lose its pacing when it comes to actually just playing the mission because you just do quick play. It gives you a random mission. Some random person's yelling at you about some glippity glop invading this splippity splorp and you got to go destroy it. And it's just like, I don't know what the heck's going on. Okay, whatever. I'm just doing some objective. And it's just, there we go. And you win. Here's your rewards. And I'm like, okay. And then here's a cutscene and people are going, yeah, you suck. I want to kill you. I hope you get executed. And it's like, all right, I guess I'll go do more missions.
Hey, here's what I'm loving so far about this podcast. So far, everything Andrew has like praised, he's then immediately reversed. He's immediately then gone in the complete opposite direction. He was like, the RPG elements, and then immediately talks about, I had to pick all these things at the beginning, and it does nothing. Okay. And then, I really like the cutscenes. Yeah, sometimes you just go into these cutscenes, and they're like, you suck, and that's the cutscene. Yeah, that's my point.
Well,
the story didn't matter. It was irrelevant, and it's fine. That was not the point of this game. I don't know a single person that was like, I really want to play this because I really want the story. And if you are that person, you're not going to enjoy it. But so far, I've already turned Andrew on both of his pros. So this game will be a pass by the end of this episode. Go ahead.
Even though I am complaining about it, but literally every other 4v Horde game we play, there's at least no cutscenes. Like, you maybe, if you're lucky, will get one in the intro, and that is it. But at least in this one, it at least kind of sets up this universe and explains, like, hey, chaos is going on this planet, and you need to stop it. And me, who has a general grasp of Warhammer, I'm like, okay, I get it. Let's do it.
Well,
Okay,
so,
okay.
even though I am slightly complaining about it, it at least gives me something
No,
unlike
no,
other
They
games.
don't need to set up a base because Warhammer has how big of a base already. Like, it should be easy to build a story. It's kind of like Halo. If they were to make a TV show and then they were just like, I don't know.
Oh, let's talk about the Halo
let's
TV show here.
loosely theme it on Halo, but not really make it Halo. It's kind of like doing that. You have this whole big universe that's created in Warhammer. There's tabletop games. There's multiple video games, and it's like, I don't know. Everyone just hates you, and you're just saving this planet for no good reason.
I think we gotta slow this down. For one, do not mention the Halo TV show. I am not coming on another episode of this stinking podcast to talk about the Halo TV show. No one else wants to hear it. For two, let's keep in mind there are multiple Warhammer games here, and there are multiple Warhammer games that are very story driven. And I think I played was it Inquisitor or Inquisition?
Vermintide?
No. This one was also on Game Pass. I want to say it was a third person. It was not the Space Marine one. I think it was called Inquisitor. It was...
There is a Warhammer, Inquisitor.
Yeah, it was... So
I don't remember it being on Game Pass.
I don't know how I would have played it, because I would have played that on Game Pass.
I remember
so,
that.
Yeah, see, I know things about Game Pass. So, there are story-driven Warhammer games out there. Now, I'll just put this out here for you, okay? Let's say all this game gave you was a general intro. You know why you're there, and you kind of have a general idea of what you're doing. If they didn't put another cutscene in that entire game, would you have cared? The answer is, I'll answer it for you. The answer is no. So you can sit there and say, well, all the other Horde games don't put cutscenes in there because they don't need them. They don't need them. That's why. That's why they don't do it, because since the game is very heavily based on kind of repetition, you're kind of doing the same things over and over again. There is no linear progression through a storyline. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. You and I played the other day. We finished a level, and I went into some random cutscene. Again, like you said, you suck. I don't like you. I got introduced to some new guy, and I was like, I don't know why any of that happened, why that existed. I don't know what I did in this level to deserve this cutscene. It just happened. And it didn't need to. Why even spend your time on that? Don't do that. Spend more time on the other elements. And
For people like Warhammer, it wraps you more into
then
the lore
go
of it.
play the other Warhammer games. There are other Warhammer games that are focused on that. That's not what this is. It's just not that game. So those elements feel incredibly weak because they're not needed. They don't progress anything. They're just there to be there. I am
valid
correct.
argument. I will accept that. I'll accept that's a
Thank
valid
you.
argument.
Oh, gee. You're welcome, Aaron. You're allowed to have opinions on this podcast.
And Keith, you also agree with my opinion, I presume?
I mean, I skipped all of the cutscenes.
Yeah, exactly, because they were pointless. You literally missed nothing.
I take that back. I didn't skip all of the cutscenes. I did watch the beginning one where, they were like, hey, you're bad. And you're like, no, I'm not bad. And then you saved everyone, and they're like, we still hate you.
Yep.
Go do more stuff. And then I skipped all of the other cutscenes.
Yeah. You were like, I'm already hearing that every day in my life. I don't need to hear that in this video game as well. I got it.
You're like, man, did my wife make a video game for me? All right, but let's get to the gameplay then. So, right off the bat, I just want to say, like I said, there's 4 classes. So, what class did you guys focus on? What did you guys pick?
I was the Psyker, which I think was just the magic guy. I mean, I did magic stuff, so I assume he was the magic guy. But he was fun. I liked doing it. I got chain lightning, and that was pretty cool. I could just stun a bunch of people, and then you could come through and just kind of beat the crap out of everyone, or everyone else on my team could. So that was kind of fun. But so the thing about this, like a lot of these, especially deep lore, deep canon based games, Payday, Warhammer, you have people who play these games, and they play these games. They don't play other games, they play this. And then you have people who pick it up occasionally, like myself. And then they're doing all of these things, and they're running around, and you basically play alone when you're playing with random people. That was kind of a little bit of my experience. So it was fun playing with you, because that's when I actually did get to use my magic spells and all that more usefully.
Until my internet kicked me out.
Yeah, and then we got destroyed.
Oh, did you? I was going to ask you if you guys won that match then.
We did not.
Ooh.
I played the Ogren, so the big beefy boy, which, in my opinion, is the only character that's worth playing. I did not play any of the others, but I can tell you for a fact he is the best guy to play. I named him Sparkle, which was a great name for him. It fit his personality. It fit his backstory that I created that was really important to the RPG elements of the game. That's it. I played Ogren.
And I did the Zealot, or Priest, depending on when you played this game. I named her Karen, which was quite fitting because she was nonstop yelling about just everything.
Always
she,
asking for
she
the
had
manager.
she had one volume tone. It was very loud all the time.
Yeah, I was named Jafar, and I was always complaining about something. So, I don't know.
And your guy also just sounded insane, which I guess fits his profile, being a
sounded
psyker.
like a weird, like, mad scientist.
Yeah. But my character was, playing as a Zealot was a bit more of a support character, which actually was a lot of fun. Aaron apparently disagrees with this, but like as I said, they revamped the classes, and there's essentially 3 skill trees you can go through, branching skill trees, and you can actually kind of intercept and kind of change course a little bit as you're like leveling up your character. Level 30 is the max level, and you can kind of pick and choose kind of how your role is. So there's ways you can build where it could be more heavy focus on melee. I was like in between of area denial, support, and melee. And I thought it was a ton of fun because I had this ability where I could stun all the enemies, but it was also giving overshield to all my allies, and I thought it was fun. Yeah, as I said with the gameplay, you're typical 4v horde. You are picking a map. You have different objectives depending on the map, which didn't feel too different. Some were like, oh, it's a recon. You're gathering information. And so when you go on the mission, you may be placing your device, like a device on a computer to get some intel. Sometimes you have a mission where you're trying to assassinate a target, in which at the end of the level, you're essentially fighting a boss. There's some levels where you're sabotaging. There's I think 7 different types of game modes you can do, but they kind of felt the same, but I didn't care. I thought the actual gameplay was a ton of fun. In a typical 4v horde kind of game mode, there's obviously tons of enemies that are being thrown at you. But what's kind of, to me, what felt different about Darktide is I didn't feel like there was as many enemies, and it was more kind of focused and visceral as how the combat felt to me. I felt like I was more attacking packs of 15 maybe enemies, and just the combat was a bit more focused. And it wasn't just a wall of bodies that you're just throwing bullets at and killing everyone.
Yeah, I would agree on the gameplay. I'm sorry, Keith. You go ahead.
Well, so I don't know. I guess where I don't fully disagree is that, yeah, it's not just massive hordes at all times, but it was constant. And I think that was where it didn't feel like it mattered what style of level I was playing. And you kind of said it, but you have these different modes, and none of them really felt like it mattered. So I almost would have preferred, and I keep doing this on these games, and where I'm going is Exo Primal. Just make it that. Make it where I'm just running forward, go to this point, that my objective is to kill X amount of enemies, and don't try to sugarcoat it with some weird thing to make it seem different. Just make it me mashing through enemies. Because I do agree with you. I think the overall combat is pretty fun. I liked the hack and slash feel to it, and it felt like you actually were doing, like, you could kind of target your damage. Not to skip into graphics yet, but like there was ways that it felt like if you attacked the arms, you would chop off their arms, their head, all these different things. I liked that aspect of the combat, but the overall loop of it just felt like mashing through enemies.
Yeah, I would say the combat is the bread and butter here. In my opinion, that is where you're going to have the most fun with it. Having a massive horde of people to kind of chop through is fun. I know that's kind of counter what Andrew's saying, but that is ultimately what this thing is.
And it should be in this type of game.
And it should be, because the objectives are not it. That's not where the fun's at. I think in all the time that I played, I think the other day, Andrew, when you and I played, that one where you bring out the little walkie-talkie to go tag the things around the map, that was probably the most diverse thing that I did in all of it. Because so much of it is walk to this location, and like you said, plug this thing into a computer. But you don't really have to do a ton with it. Well, I guess the one where we had to collect the fuel cells was pretty good
there's
too.
still some things that are slightly different. Yeah, collect a thing and put it in. But a lot of times you are generally waiting in an area and defending that area.
That was it. Like, I did find that one with the little walkie-talkie things a little bit more fun. Just because you guys were all fighting as I'm running around with this little beeper. Just running around the room trying to find the things.
I was trying to defend you.
Yeah, no, it was... So there were certain elements like that was fun, but at the end of the day, that's not what I really care about. And what I care about is... I see, and maybe this is different because you come from a different background in these types of games. I just don't play these a whole lot. So when I got into this, and when you get that first feeling of doing one of those wide arcing, like, whacks, where you just end up hitting, like, 7 people at once, you're like, I can do this 100 times. Like, that's
It kind of feels like Dynasty Warriors.
Yeah, so just keep sending hordes. Where you say, I'm kind of glad they didn't send that many. Me, I'm like, nah, just stick me in front of a door and just keep sending them. I'll just keep pounding them in the face, and that's fun. And
hold on, I'm not saying they didn't send a lot of numbers at you. Like, I've played a lot, like Back for Blood. I played World War Z. I played the other game that's like this, Vermintide, and you're usually looking at like hundreds of enemies on the screen. And in this one, I felt like it's obviously a lot more corridors. So there's ways to like set up choke points and just kind of focus on a small number of people and work on it.
Yeah. I would agree with that. But to me, that is the bread and butter of this game. It just is. It's mostly melee. You obviously all do have weapons, but ammo's somewhat limited. You guys are kind of fighting over ammo. But it is, majority of that is built on kind of melee combat, and I think it feels good. I think it feels pretty weighty. And that to me was one of the few things that I would say was really, really good about the game. There's a lot of things to me that are pretty average about this game, and I still think it's good, but that to me was the better of the elements.
So you described it right there. To me, like, the melee felt weighty, and I loved it. This game, so one of my favorite weapons was the Eviscerator sword, which it's the typical iconic sword. If you know anything about Warhammer 40k, it's the chainsaw sword, and it's actually one of my favorite weapons in a video game. I was having so much fun with it. Just the sound effects of the chainsaw going ring and it just chopping people in half. I was like smiling. I've just been using that weapon for so many games, and it just doesn't get old. I could just keep chainsawing hordes down, and it's just so fun. I think the combat in this game is just a ton of fun. Because even, too, when it comes to the guns, as you said, the guns, you kind of got to be a little sparing with because of the ammo. The guns are quite diverse. To actually being like a ballistic gun, it has heavy recoil but does more damage. You have laser guns that are a bit more accurate, but, don't pack as much of a punch. Flamethrowers, you got shotguns, you got a whole gambit of weapons. There's a ton of weapons in this game. And every time you're leveling up, it's like, oh, you can use this weapon now. You can use this weapon now. See, I loved it.
There are, but that brings me to a gripe that I had. The gun names. It's all MK Roman numeral auto gun, MK Roman numeral auto gun, and just like a bunch of different things like that. And you have to then remember, okay, is this one the one that's got a wicked recoil and kind of isn't great for a long range, or like what? Give me better gun names. Give me something that's not basically the same gun name over and over again and make me remember what I'm picking. That is a nuisance, and I didn't care for that.
I do agree with you there a little bit, Keith. I can kind of tell by the picture of the gun that I'm like, okay, I kind of know what I'm getting into. But I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, that kind of brings me... I'm glad that we are transitioning into the guns, because this is another element of the RPG side of this that I do not care about with this game. I just did not feel like upgrading your weapon. I did not notice an impact on almost any upgrade I had in this game.
I disagree with that.
And maybe, honestly, it might be an Ogren issue. It might be just the fact that the Ogren was just big beefy boy, so he's not big damage boy. And that's the problem. But I'm looking through the skill tree, and I'm like, none of these things seem like they're really moving the needle. And I reset it and then tried a different route to see if that would do something, and I really didn't. Every time I got new weapons, I felt like I was hitting people about the same amount of times as I was before. I think you when I was playing with you, Andrew, I had that one grenade launcher, which was cool, but it only really like insta-killed someone on direct hit. It had some splash damage, but it knocked people down mostly. But I just felt like I was hitting about the same no matter what I was using. So I was switching up the weapons almost every time, and I would upgrade it to whatever the purple rank was on it. And it just didn't feel like it did much of an impact. So I would say I wouldn't know what I was building for. I had no clue what I was building for because I didn't know what was going to make a difference.
You didn't look up YouTube videos to look up builds?
I didn't feel like I needed to. Because here's another thing that we all experience different things here. I say I probably played somewhere between 5 or 6 games with just randoms. I have not lost a single round in this game. You guys have all had bad experiences. You guys have lost a lot. I haven't. I never, and maybe it was because it's important to have an Ogren on your team. Just having the big beefy boy is what is the difference maker. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just really good at this, and I'm secretly calling myself out for how good I am. But I never died, or I got captured once in the game that you and I played because of the demon host. But you can't do anything by that. You're gonna get killed by the demon host.
Well, no, you can't kill the demon host. The demon host is like the witch in Left 4 Dead, which I thought was a really cool ad. Because if you've played Left 4 Dead, there's a character called the witch, which is this female that is crying, and you can hear her coming from a distance. And if your team is smart, you will try to avoid her because she will wreck your entire party. And so in this game, it's the demon host, which is essentially works very similar to the demon host. The witch. You hear someone kind of whispering, and you see someone crouched. Just ignore them, because if you anger them, they will wreck your day. But this is actually a thing I did want to bring up, since you brought up that, you're so good at this game, Aaron. Javier in our Discord asked, how does this compare to Deep Rock Galactic? And that is something I do kind of want to bring up is, Deep Rock Galactic was another 4v Horde game. To me, that was a game that was so essential to having friends with, because that is so focused on objective. I felt like with Warhammer Darktide, I still enjoyed playing single player, because I still felt like you could just kind of kill people and kind of do the game overall relatively well. Eventually you got to do objectives, like Aaron was saying, when you had to do the walkie-talkie. If you are not doing the objective, enemies are just constantly in a stream coming at you, and eventually you will get whittled down and die. So it's very important that you do play the objective. But I felt like there was only like 2 instances every time you're playing a level where you really have to focus on objective. But I always felt like that was kind of a thing that separates you from winning or losing, is if you just have people who just aren't paying attention. I don't know why. I always had this bad luck with random people that just didn't look at their health. I am constantly pinging a health station, and they're running around with 25 health, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, do you not know what a health bar is? And it was this weird thing where I'm just like, why am I getting these people that just don't look at their health bar? And then sure enough, they turn a corner and just go down. It's just like, okay, whatever, dummy. But I don't know, just playing with you, Aaron, I think you were just legitimately lucky. You just had people that would heal. Like, that's all you need. Just heal.
I do want to say, in fairness, there is... this is a good-looking game. I wouldn't say this is an ugly game. For the brown and kind of just grayish hues on everything, it is still a like well-designed game where some areas, if you're really looking at it, the corridors can feel very samey, but some of the stuff going on in the backgrounds is actually quite beautiful. But that also kind of affects, especially when it comes to the health. When you were dropping health, it just looks like green smoke mixed in with a lot of like brown smoke. So it wasn't always obvious that stand here for health. So I will give a little bit of fairness. Like when somebody was dropping those, unless I was distinctly looking for that green smoke, I would sometimes just walk by it. And
I would always ping it, and your character goes healing station or healing pack here.
Yeah, I'm not always listening for that, but I that's in defense of the idiots out there. In the defense of all those idiots out there, it just the green smoke wasn't very obvious.
And I'm actually with you on the green smoke because it was probably took me a game or two before I realized that I think I actually dropped one, and that's when I realized what it was, because otherwise I was like, oh, that's something an enemy dropped, and it's probably a poison cloud, because traditionally green smoke in an area in video games means stay away. It doesn't typically mean, hey, come stand here to have good things happen for you. So my gut instinct was to move away from it until I knew what it was. So I give you that, Aaron. I will say the medical stations, though, there's no real excuse for that. The best I can come up with is people thought they were being efficient because it's a full heal no matter what. Like, oh, I don't want to do it when it's just one mini bar of health. And that's not as effective if I'm, have one bad breath away from dying, and then I'll heal because then I'm getting the max use. Like, that's good, great, and grand, except for, you turn a corner and there's a horde of 15 things coming at you. So not the time to be running around with low health.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I think if there is another shot that maybe needs to go at this game, it's a bad tutorial. And it does force you... and here's why. How many of these elements so far that we have discussed at this point show up in the tutorial? And most importantly, I think you even pointed to it, Andrew, most importantly are the instances in that map where you need to do something to progress, or a constant stream of guys are going to be coming at you. It's not immediately obvious. Like, when we got into that one room when I was using the little walkie-talkie thing, I had no clue what I was doing or how if I didn't have you, I don't know if I would have completed that. Because I had never seen that before. I had never run into it. It was not in a tutorial. So I can totally understand why some people are going into these matches, because the tutorial in this game was kind of basic combat for the most part, and some just basic mechanics. But when you get into those maps, you need more than that. Like, you actually, there's a lot of just horde killing, but then you go into these instances which were not immediately obvious. Like, they do have it highlighted to some degree, but it's not immediately obviously, okay, well, once I do this, what am I doing next? What should I be looking for here?
So I agree with you there. The tutorial, did not explain any of the objectives with you, but as I said, there really isn't too many. Like, there's a couple little mini games, such as the walkie-talkie that you're saying that you do, but like, it's very minimal. There's like very little. So yes, I do agree. The game is kind of expecting and hoping that you're playing with somebody who knows what they're doing and kind of can guide you along a little bit. But I will say, I thought the tutorial was way better than this. You weren't with our Payday 3 episode, but the tutorial on Payday 3 was like beyond bare minimum, because even that barely told you the combat. At least in Warhammer Darktide, there is a lot of nuances with the combat, and that's what I loved about this game, because as we said, this game is definitely, like, it's focusing on its combat. Like, the combat is fun, so that's where the tutorial was focused on, and the fact that you have these dodges, explaining your toughness, your health, and, like, how to do blocks and how to push people, understanding balancing of your stamina. Like, there's these little nuances with your combat that it plays with the gameplay, so it makes sense that the tutorial focused on that and not this little mini game that you're doing on the side objective. But I do agree, it is kind of odd that they don't explain a little more about what you're doing on a map.
Well, I didn't do it, but like Payday, there.
What, the tutorial?
No, I did the tutorial, but
Oh.
yeah, it forces you to do that. It won't let you out of it. But there's like a more advanced tutorial you can go into after the initial combat training. It does, like, you can go back to that area for more. And
But I think that was just for focusing on combat, though.
It does. I did it.
Oh, okay. Well, then never mind.
And again, you can make the argument that you just have to be a real dummy to not kind of figure these things out. But
You gotta be really stupid.
here's the issue: is when you come into these environments where, like, okay, you have to do something to get out of this room. It's
Yeah.
not about just killing the horde. You have to do this thing. The problem is you don't really have any time to think about it because you're being attacked constantly. So even in that instance, I'm going to keep bringing up this stinking walkie-talkie. Anytime I brought up the walkie-talkie, I could not fight. I'm looking at this walkie-talkie. So if
So you need an escort. So I try to escort you.
all I'm seeing on this little screen when I bring up is some random circles. That's it.
Oh,
That's my
yeah,
information. I see
know what you're
circles
talking
and I'm being attacked. And so it's like, if I didn't have you say, oh, you have to find those circles, you have to find it, and then you got to scan it. And I was like, okay, so I'm just going around, and again, I'm being attacked. So you could see why you don't even have time. Like if I wasn't being attacked, yeah, I could probably figure that out. I could probably look at it and go, oh, okay, yeah, I got to go over here. But it's constant hordes coming at you, so it's like. I can totally understand why people would fail at this game. It totally makes sense why that would be the case. But I got very lucky. And I never got put into an environment that we couldn't figure out. But
Who was it I played with that? And then the other thing too with the grimoires, the side objectives.
that was me.
Who was it that destroyed it? Oh, that was you.
So
you're like, oh, I got this thing, and then you broke it. I guess we're not doing that.
I don't know
objective.
why it let you. Why would it let me break it?
I don't know.
Why was that?
I never picked one up.
You know what I think it was? Okay, so Anders, according to you, you said there's 2 grimoires in every map, so it brings a
Not every
negative.
map.
I think it does. I think it always tells you as a side thing. It's a 0.
Yeah, it'll tell you. Yeah, depending on your mission, you'll sometimes have a side objective to either find scriptures or find 2 grimoires.
Got it. So as you said, this gives some type of negative effect.
Yeah,
But you
it
get
adds
more
corruption
payout
people.
at the end. Yeah. So I picked it up, and you know what it does? It takes the slot of if you have a health pack or if you have an ammo crate.
Yeah.
So I think that's why you can destroy it. So I pulled it out, like, what is this thing? And you told me, oh, it's a grimoire. You want to save it. And I hit A, and I crushed it. And I was like, oh, I probably didn't want to do that. I just immediately But I'm guessing you can do that just because either you don't want the negative effect or you want to pick up a health or ammo crate. That's
if you're picking up a health or ammo crate, you can trade it. So you can drop the grimoire and
That's
then
true.
pick up the ammo
Then I
crate.
have no clue why it allows you to break it. I didn't know that was a thing. I was just like, oh, okay, cool, smash. Never mind, I broke it. So we didn't get it.
But Aaron, as you mentioned earlier, and I gotta agree with you. Like this game, it's actually graphically, I absolutely loved how this game looked, and I think that's also why I enjoyed the cutscenes. I thought the cutscenes were actually cool looking. I wish they had more action in them, but I thought they were generally really cool looking. If you know Warhammer, like this game is like a picture perfect depiction of Warhammer, which is also kind of sad and dreary. As we said, there's no vegetation anywhere, but
No
I
trees.
loved the graphics. I thought this game, it just added to the visceral nature of this game. When you're slicing through hordes, you're literally seeing kind of spurts of like brown rotted blood that are filled with like maggots. People's armor, you're chopping limbs off and stuff like that. The graphics in this game, I think, are absolutely top notch.
Yeah, I think overall it's, I don't know. Like, I agree, and I had said it earlier, when you're hacking and slashing your way through, whether it's an axe or a what's it called, chainsaw, sword, whatever it may be, the actual melee is probably the most fun of the combat, and I think the rest of it's fine. The guns are cool, but it's because of the fact that it adds to the visual nature of the game. It's not just about the combat being more or less fun. It's about adding to the visual. So I do agree with that, but I think overall, yeah, I just struggle to get past the overall blah of the colors. I think that
I agree with you there,
Aaron
Keith.
pointed out there's some almost, maybe not vistas, but there's just some views in the background. You're in these, big open areas that are kind of cool visually, but the color scheme of everything, I'm just like, nothing felt interesting.
Yeah, I'm a fan of just being very specific. So in three different elements that I think just visually kind of stick out as very striking is your hub. Your hub area is actually really cool, especially at the area where you're kind of going to select your missions. If you take some time to kind of just look around you there, it's actually very, like, there's a lot of artistry that went into that. It actually looks really great. There are certain maps in particular. I couldn't name a single map in this game. I don't think anybody could.
Same.
But there are certain maps that you get into, and especially when you're kind of entering into the buildings, again, if you kind of look into the background and see it, you're like, man, there was a lot of detail put into this. And much like Keith said, I think the elements of when you're smashing people in the face with big blunt objects, that should look and feel pretty good. And I think they've done an excellent job with that as well. But it's very easy. I think you can critique. I think some of the weapon design is blandish. I mean, especially some of the guns in particular. And mind you, the Ogren, I understand, probably didn't have a whole lot of cool things happening there. But that stuff looks at... And then you can make an argument that you could play every single one of those maps. And if you took a snapshot in some of those corridors, you would never be able to tell the difference in them. They are the same exact corridors. And you spend a lot of time in those corridors. Those don't look awesome. So there's very specific elements where I think the graphics really shine through. And yeah, I'm not even going to take shots at the color palette. That's what the color palette is for Warhammer.
It is, yeah.
To me, it's totally on brand, so I can't be like, there wasn't enough neon in there. Yeah, there was never going to be neon because it's not Warhammer. So,
where's the pinks?
But yeah, when you're looking at just kind of cathedral-esque looking buildings,
Gothic,
and hulking kind of looking characters and stuff like that, this nails it across the board. They do a really good job on that part of it.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed in the character creation because I was waiting for Keith to create some sort of monstrosity, but like the character creation
all
was
are.
just kind of yeah, that's true. Yeah, people in general are not.
They
very
just
good.
naturally are.
I was pretty excited for it when I first got into it because the kind of default character it gave me, I went, ugh. Just kind of looking at it, and I was like, okay, I could probably make this worse, and I really couldn't. So I kind of just ended up with what I had. But it was all right.
Yeah. But I 100% agree with you, though, Aaron. Like, a lot of the corridors, do feel the same, but there was a lot of vistas and stuff that looked awesome. Like, one thing that was always kind of weird to me, there was one map where as soon as you start, it's like raining, and you're kind of in the slums. But I look up, and there's a ceiling above you, so it's like, where's this rain coming from? But I just loved... That's kind of what I think it was. But, like, the characters didn't say kind of it. But, overall, I thought just graphically, like, I enjoyed the environments a lot. But yeah, you are kind of killing a lot of just mindless hordes. But I will say a lot of the enemies, there was a good amount of character models. When it got to the human-esque characters that weren't like zombies, they were copying and paste of very looking kind of like nomadic sand people. Like they all kind of looked kind of similar. But as far as the zombies went, I felt like there was actually a varied amount of different character models, which was nice. But yeah, I agree. I think the details in just all the little environments actually looked really, really awesome. But yeah, as you're saying though, as far as like gun design stuff goes, it is a bit bland. And I think unfortunately that is due to the microtransactions. There's of course microtransactions in this game. You can buy premium currency and there's a premium currency shop where you can buy cosmetics. Of course, they are very cool looking, but you got to fork over some cash, which is really irritating, but whatever. This game is on Game Pass, but it always irritates me when you're paying a full-price game and there's these weird, stupid microtransactions of premium currencies and stuff like that.
This doesn't retail for $70, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure this was like a $40 or $50 purchase.
You might be right.
Outside of, obviously, this is Game Pass focused, so it is not costing you that much to play it. But from my understanding, I don't think this game was a full $70 experience.
You are correct. According to Steam, yeah, it is a $40 game.
Yeah, and so in that case, if you weren't on Game Pass, would you pay $40 for this and care about the microtransactions? I'd say no. I'd say that's a good trade-off.
Yeah. I guess you're right.
I still probably wouldn't pay $40 for it personally, but if I was looking to buy it and $40 was my price tag, yeah, I wouldn't feel as bad about some cost on microtransactions.
And that's kind of always been my thought. And my thought is, I'm cool with microtransactions generally. I'm so numb to them now because it's just been, I mean, how many years of gaming have we had to deal with microtransactions to some degree? So I'm numb to them. They're there. I don't really care about them all that much. I'm way more forgiving of it. If you're going to load your game up with a bunch of microtransactions, either be free or be cheap. And fine, I would agree with you, Keith. Like, this isn't the type of game that I normally gravitate towards, as I've already established. I don't play these types of games very often. Assuming I did, $40 feels like an absolute steal, though. $40 feels like a steal because there's a lot of levels here. There's a ton of missions to play, and it felt like a pretty decent amount of progression to go through as well. So, to me, $40 feels like an absolute steal if you were having to pay for this on PC or something like that.
See, that's one thing I love about this podcast. See, I love these types of games, and I can force my friends to actually play with me by doing this podcast. Hey, you want to do a Darktide episode with me? Come play with me. But now that we're recording this episode, I have no one to play with again, so back to square one. But I do agree with you, Aaron, though. And surprisingly, there's no battle pass either. I feel like that's another typical gaming norm of there's a battle pass, but no.
Yeah, I know you really didn't hit on it much here to start, but so far, Darktide's had a rough go of things to kind of start out.
Oh, very bad launch.
So this was supposed to launch on Game Pass like a year ago. That's when this game officially launched, and they couldn't get it working, I think, on Xbox at all at the time, but it launched in a pretty bad state. Like, there was we don't even know this because we've only played it on Game Pass, but as you pointed out, there were characters that had to be every character got completely redone.
Yep.
So all their skills and everything had to be completely redone. There were like shops that didn't work. There was like basically no systems for kind of crafting, which we all got to experience, but that stuff was not there to begin with. So what we're experiencing now is not what everyone's been experiencing for the last year if you've been playing this on
That's crazy.
On PC. But
yeah, it came out November 30th.
Yeah.
It has almost been a year. Wow.
I remember when it launched, I was very excited for it. It looked great, so I was very excited to play it. And it launched on PC, and everyone was like, "Uh-oh." And then it didn't launch on Game Pass, and there was kind of like this, like, "Oh, yeah, it's coming soon." So I was like, "All right, fine, I'll wait a month."
I think it was on Game Pass PC. I think it might launch on Game Pass PC.
Yeah, I just know in general it made it onto PC.
Yeah.
It just didn't make it to the actual Xbox here until just a couple weeks ago.
All right, but as far as the audio goes, though, to me the audio was a bit of a mixed bag. You know, this is a game you really kind of need to wear a headset for because, you know, you're hearing the sound effects when a horde is incoming. You know, it kind of gives an audio cue. Music starts to pick up. You hear some shouting in the background. Then, of course, there's some specialty enemies that you fight that you really need to listen to because they will focus in like one of your allies and they will take them down. Like I said, there's the demon host where you hear someone whispering. You need to make sure you're listening for that because you don't want to end up bumping into that and kind of screwing your party over. You know, you need to watch out for the hounds because it pins down your teammate and they will die unless you save them. So you really need to listen to audio in this game. And the audio can be really good. I thought sometimes the music kicking in with some nice, good loud butt rock. I enjoyed it. I thought it was actually fit the vibe very well. But the banter got very tiring. At first I was like, hey, this is kind of funny. It's filling in some lore. As I said, my character was the zealot. She's just constantly yelling. And so, I got kind of sick of my character because people would ask her a question and she's just like, yes, of course, let's do this. And just constantly yelling. And I'm like, please, can this woman just shut up? And then too, like, a lot of the people are talking about, if you do not know Warhammer lore, 90% of what they're talking about is complete gibberish. It is just like the Inquisitor is fighting the heresy that is going around and spreading sin, and it's just like, what are you talking about? But if you don't know Warhammer, you don't know what they're talking about. So it is kind of out all over the place. So that being said, like I said, audio, it had its highs and it had its lows. There's also a lot of repeating audio too, which has got a bit annoying.
Yeah, I don't know. I think really about the only thing I really truly thought was cool about the audio was, again, some of the hack and slashing and like the sounds that it made as you're going through that. I didn't personally have your little chainsaw weapon, but being around it, like it was cool to watch and all that. Otherwise, the audio was kind of funny for the first few times I heard the lines, but then I got a little tired of that, and the music was fitting. It did fit the vibe, but really could have done without it. Would have been fine. I think that's about it for audio.
I felt like you said a whole lot of nothing there, Keith.
I really did. But
I heard sounds. Some guns go boom.
That's shooting.
That's kind of how I can summarize it. Nothing was ever really all that special, other than I liked the melee sounds.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm a fan of specifics, as I've stated earlier, so I will get specific. If I have to hear that freaking mutant yelling through the halls,
mutant.
And he hits me every time.
Every time the mutant hit you.
Literally, he will go out of his way to avoid all of my teammates just to smash me in the face. So you can hear him stomping and yelling, and the spatial audio was pretty great. I could hear when he was coming up behind me, and I could kind of pick out that's the hallway or staircase this guy is yelling at right now to come hit me in the face. I could literally pile up behind my team, and he will just push them out of the way to come smash me. I don't know why. He did not like me.
Maybe because you were the Ogren, and it just kind of targets the big guy first. Feels intimidated by you. If
that's the case, yeah, that feels a little messed up. Because, if he was smart, he should go for the little, scrawny little dudes, smash them, not me. But those audio cues were great. And every time I heard it, I was like, all right, here he comes. He's coming for me, guys. Like, I'm just letting everybody know. Yes, sound was great. I do want to push back though. You kind of just dismiss this music as butt rock, Andrew. You know what this music was, especially in those like where you had to do a mission, so it kind of like locks you down and it starts throwing hordes at you. In a lot of ways, it reminded me of the Doom soundtrack. Now the Doom soundtrack is like is top tier. So let's just say that's like the gold standard. This was under it considerably, but you could tell that was the vibe they really wanted to get this to. Yeah. And they're working on a little bit of a smaller budget than what Bethesda has out here. So some of those songs, like, if you're really listening to, you're like, man, this is trying to hit. Like this wants to kind of smash you a little bit there. And I was like, what, they could have phoned this in, but it actually sounds like they put some care and attention into it. So I would actually push back a little bit. I don't want to just dismiss it as, it's butt rock. I actually think they were trying to hit for something a little bit higher there. And I'm not saying it's Doom. It's not Doom Eternal. That was top tier, gold standard. Everybody would strive to be that. But I don't think it's that far behind at some points. So I would push back on that. I actually think that it does have some highs there that are worth listening to.
All right.
I don't think you're wrong. I don't know. It just didn't do much for me. That's all.
I will, generally speaking, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just kind of how I focus on things. The score of a game usually fades into the back for me. Yeah. So it kind of takes a lot for when it really is elevated and I start to notice it. And through most of that, I'm not noticing the score, but there were moments where it stood out and I was like, oh, okay. I can kind of see what they're trying to hit here. And it's, an elevated moment. They're trying to pump it up. And it was working. But the rest of it, I'm kind of, I'm phoning out. But Yes, I know, because that's what I am. I convince, and whatever stance you have, I push you away from. You said butt rock, I say I reject that.
I was
you
more
agree
describing the in-between spaces. As you're saying, when you get to objectives and stuff, it does elevate and it does kick in. But there is a lot of moments when the horde is coming. There's this generally generic track that is played when a horde in just like a random event is happening. That's just kind of relatively generic. That's more what I was describing. So
for the record,
I apologize.
For the record, butt rock is like Creed. Oh, did you hear "With Arms Wide Open" in there? Is that what you were listening to in there?
Could you imagine? You're fighting the hordes with a chainsaw sword with arms wide open.
Yeah, you're gonna get a DMCA strike on this. Creed is gonna be coming. They want a royalty off of that right there.
No, I said 2 words.
You're supposed to change. You're supposed to change one of the lyrics there, like I don't know, with fingers wide open or something like that.
With arms partially open.
I would have said with legs wide open, but that didn't. That's not. That's not gonna work.
That's a completely different vibe. We're going
that's a different. That's a different thing.
Oh, that one gets edited out. That's above our PG-13 rating.
What? That's PG-13.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what ratings are.
All right, but as far as achievements go, the achievements this game is definitely not for achievement hunters. For playtime, it's funny on time to beat. You're looking between 28 hours and 177 hours. So yeah, if you're really looking to kind of do a lot of the achievements in this game, it's going to be a long, difficult battle to get all the achievements. You know, because there's an achievement to literally level each of the class to level 30 to maximum level. So definitely don't recommend it for achievement hunters. But as far as achievements go, they were fine. There's a couple where you actually kind of had to focus on to get the actual achievement, but I don't know. To me, the achievements were particularly kind of forgettable because nothing was very fun about them.
Yeah, I think I got like 3, maybe. We don't have this information. This isn't here.
I couldn't even tell you what I got.
I know that some of them are class specific, and I only played one class.
Yes,
so
there's like about 3 for each class. But yeah, I didn't look up our gamer score, so I probably did the best. So anyway, moving on. But anyway, let's get to our final thoughts here. Is there anything? Oh, actually, before we do that, so Aaron, you did mention that this game started off in a very rough state. So I do kind of want to go back and ask you guys. You know, this game's been out for about a year. What bugs did you guys ended up interacting with? Because I know Keith had a particular funny one.
So I don't know, what was that thing we were fighting? The big ugly slug thing.
It was called the Spawn of Hergel.
Yeah,
it was something like that.
Well, yeah. Either way, there was that one, and so I knew that it could eat you because you had gotten eaten, and it runs around and throws you out, and so then it ate me, and lo and behold, it spit me out, but it spit me out inside of a wall. So I got to sit there inside of, it was like a pillar, I think, too.
Yeah.
I could see everything that was going wrong around me, but I couldn't partake, couldn't be part of the fun. So I just had to quit, lose all of my progress, and, well, I think we ended up losing anyways, but
yeah,
I got even less experience.
We had real bad teammates that round.
Yeah. So I got losing experience in a shortened time frame because I had to quit and rejoin. So that was cool.
I don't think I had a single bug. I can't recall one.
I had an audio bug that drove me real insane. We fought a demon host and we lost it. We had one teammate that lived and he just ran away and was able to get us all back. But the rest of the round, I just kept hearing whispering of just like these people talking, and it was driving me bonkers. That got real annoying. It's like, of course, me. I'm going to have the one that has the audio bug. The one who gets annoyed by audio sounds, and I get an audio bug. But yeah, play with Keith. Yeah, we had that one. Oh, there was another time. I don't know if it was a bug or just my teammates were so bad, but there was one mission where you had to go through ventilating shafts. And when you hit a switch, it would close the shafts. So I had 2 teammates that didn't exit the shaft, and they were stuck in there. And then, of course, them being dummies, they kept fighting enemies in there, and they just wouldn't die, and just have us respawn them and like save them later on. So me and the one other person that got out of the shaft eventually died. So the 2 remaining survivors were stuck in a shaft, and we were just staring at them the entire time. And it was just like, okay, this is awful. Typical me.
I never had any of the, like, my teammates were all pretty competent. I think there was only one time where one guy just kind of sprinted through the map. But even then, we made it through fine. Like, we survived. It's just crazy you had this many issues.
I am curious, and like not even in a judgmental way, obviously, but what difficulty were you playing on? Because I know at least, and I think I just played on whatever the default was, the few that I was playing by myself. But I know with Andrew, you put it on like slightly higher difficulties when you and I were
so
playing.
There's essentially 5 difficulties. Of course, they're named like Malice, Heresy, like they're kind of weird names. So for simplicity's sake, let's just say like easy, like very easy, normal, hard, very hard. I played on like easy, so like level 2 of 5. So as soon as I started the game, because usually when it comes to a 4v horde game mode, you usually have the option to like up the difficulty a little bit, you get better rewards. And usually when you up the difficulty, it's just like, hey, you're just going to be semi-competent, do the objectives, you'll be fine. So I tried doing that. And I think that's where I struggled, is because I kept getting rooms with people that were like level 1 and 2. Clearly didn't know the game, didn't know what they were doing, but they were up in the difficulty as well. And they just weren't doing the objective, and I was just getting awful teammates. So I went down to the level 1 difficulty, the very easy, and that's when I finally started to win. But I was hoping too, like usually because when you can up the difficulty, you can kind of weed out the newbies, people who really don't know what they're doing. They're not going to try risking a higher difficulty. But nope, apparently in this game, I was getting the real newbies that were trying to do a harder difficulty, and I was paying for it.
That's the funny thing about this, though, is I didn't. The game was never challenging. I put it on 2 as well. That's what I put it on. So no, I wasn't on very easy. I guess I was on whatever 2 is.
Yeah.
I never thought the game was difficult, and I would think if you were going to lose, the only way we were going to lose is if people didn't understand the objective that we were doing at that time. But good thing it had a really good, robust tutorial to tell you what to do in those objectives. And I'm not saying that with sarcasm, obviously. So that's the problem, right? You say you're with level 1s. The game's not hard. So what are those level 1s? Why would those level 1s not know what to do?
I think that's kind of the weird thing about it, and I don't know. This is probably a late thing for gameplay, but I don't know that I ever felt like the game was hard. Even when I was losing, it wasn't like I was like, oh, this is so hard. It was just you just slowly get whittled down because I don't know. We've talked about it before. Like it's so constant. There's never a point where you kind of have good break points, and so it just if you didn't get through the level quick enough, then you ultimately just weren't going to win, or you'd run into one big beefy boss that would, might just wreck your team quick enough that you don't recover. And those were kind of the 2 reasons I would fail, but never like, oh man, that was impossible. It was just bad luck mostly.
All right, Aaron, Mr. Critical, why don't you start off? Why don't you give us your final review of Warhammer?
Yeah, because then I can just go what he said.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Warhammer is a fun experience, much like it has been mentioned here. The more friends you've got, up to 4, the more fun you're going to have. Obviously, going in solo is not going to be your best experience there. It's a pretty good-looking game if you don't mind looking at boring colors. The smashing part of this game is a lot of fun. I would say the RPG elements are still lacking and probably still need a lot of work there. But it's easy playing. It really is kind of a sit back and relax. Though, another small critique we didn't really mention here. I don't love that each map takes like 30 minutes.
That's true.
This feels like maps should be 15. It just feels like that would be a nice little sweet spot for it. All in all, I'm going to give this I don't know if I want to put this up into like the whole 8 territory. I kind of want to go a little bit lower than that. Still good. I'm gonna say it's like a 79 or 7.9, however you guys want to rate it. I always forget. You guys do it. You guys do it on a scale of 100.
We do
right?
100, yeah.
All right, so 79. I'm giving it a 79.
Yeah, so as far as Darktide goes, I guess it's really the only Warhammer game I've ever played. I want to say I might have picked up an hour or so of Vermintide, which, if it's anything like this, an hour, it's slightly more than an introduction to the game. You've probably played like one round of it, but I think overall the gameplay I find to be fun enough that if I were consistently playing it with 4 friends, and I kind of like Aaron had mentioned, that I would come back to it more frequently. And it's not even that having random players or random teammates was that much of a drag, because if people leave, it fills it with bots, and then ultimately we'll fill it in with human players. So it can still balance itself out and work and be totally fine, even if you just want to pick it up solo. But for me, it just didn't have enough to it that I want to come back to it. And we completely glossed over it, but I think the mission length is such a huge factor to it. I definitely agree that if they could whittle these down to 10 to 15 minute chunks, then I would have a lot more fun with the gameplay loop. But when you're 25 minutes through and then you just, like I said, run into some boss that stomps everyone on your team real quick because no one's healed up and you weren't prepared for it, and all of that was for nothing, versus you could have gotten 2, maybe 3 levels for just getting past that point. So it makes the rewards feel so few and far between. So I would probably, I don't know, I think maybe go for another 4v Horde game. I don't want to say Exo Primal, but I'm going to say Exo Primal because that's just what I do. I swear I don't get paid for it, but I should at this point. And so I still think it's a game, and it's worth playing, especially if you have some friends to play with. Because the more I say this, I realize I guess I just don't have friends, or something like that.
That's why I picked this game to force you guys to play with me.
As a score, though, I'd give it an 81.
So yes, thank you, Aaron, for bringing up the gameplay length, because that was actually a point I wanted to bring up. I do not recommend this game for xCloud because it is unfortunate. You do have to focus and play this match, and unfortunately the matches are just long. And as we said, like, all the matches really kind of feel the same. So it's not like, oh, if I do this match is a 15-minute one. This is a quick one. So, but that also being said, I felt like just about every time I was doing a match, I was gaining a level. So like the reward to me felt like pretty good, of just like, hey, I did a match, now I got another level, another talent point, get to work more on my build. But overall, though, for me, Warhammer 40K, the combat to me was just so visceral and weighty. I loved the melee in this game. It just felt so good. As I said, the Eviscerator Sword is probably one of my favorite top video game weapons. I thought it was a ton of fun. It just always brought a smile on my face. Even though I've been using it for hours, I still just I don't want to get rid of this sword. It's just a blast. I thought the character builds, even though Aaron disagrees, I thought actually did work out quite a bit. I played a support role, which did at least help me carry my dummy teammates that wouldn't heal. I could kind of give him an overshield and stun the enemies around him to help him actually survive a little bit. So I actually felt like I could change my build around a little bit and actually change the gameplay up. So I liked the character building aspect of it, but I agree with Aaron. The RPG elements was very lackluster. I think it was kind of put in there for the diehard Warhammer fans to be like role-playing a little bit, but there's no dialogue choices, so I didn't understand the purpose of picking my home world and my backstory. But environments, the Fat Shark absolutely nails it. This feels like a 40K Warhammer 40K game. It looks, which is also, as Aaron said, the color palette is very browns and grays and stuff like that, but the combat is just fun. I played a lot of it solo, and I think this still was a lot of fun playing solo. Even though I had dummy teammates, I did not care. I was instantly going back to other matches and just playing again, because I also loved the loot, getting new weapons, getting better, getting stronger. It's a ton of fun. I'm giving it an 83.
I feel like our scores are way too close. I'm gonna to pull Liz's comment there, and not in a bad way, but I feel like
It is kind of weird how close we are because I felt like Aaron was negative
with this game. Well, because I like, so what part of role playing is there if all of the picking backstory and things just don't matter? I guess you're not role playing anything. You have a skill tree. It's an action game with a skill tree.
You pick your character's name. You can. I forgot about this story.
But
I played a game where a guy was playing an Ogren and his name was Grunk. And he literally, the entire match, kept talking in third person of Grunk will destroy people for you, and just literally kept talking that way. And so people were getting into it and being like, Grunk, no. And he's like, oh, Grunk, sorry. And that was actually pretty funny.
All right, so that's the person who actually nailed it on there.
But, yeah, he was actually role-playing.
But my further question is going to be, if you want like visceral hack and slash, though, would you play this or a Gears of War game?
This. Because
doesn't that
Gears
have
of
horde
War
mode
was more
games?
shooting. Say that again?
Don't those have plenty of horde mode games where you can just hack and slash with saw blades?
It had a horde game mode, but it wasn't like this. The horde game mode was way more tactical. It was more of a base defense kind of game mode.
All right, I guess. I'd rather play base defense. That's more me.
I know. But anyway, as far as Metacritic goes, for the Metascore, it's looking at a 74. And for user score, it's a 4.8 with 139 reviews. And I did notice a lot of the zeros, though, are because of the very poor launch it had. So I think there just hasn't been as many reviews recently now that the game's been fixed and working way more smooth. But yeah, I think that'll do it for us. So I've been your Hardcore Gamer, Sandra. You can find me on Xbox Live at Firebird0952. If you have any game suggestions or you want to join us on our Discord, go to GamePassGrabBag.com. You'll find the links to all of our things. We record usually Tuesdays at around 8:30 EST.
We did that once.
But yeah, we literally rotate every other day or every other week. This week we ended up doing Wednesday, but then next week we will be Tuesday.
Wednesday.
Yeah. But anyway, Aaron, go. I choose you.
I am the co-host of the Screen Test podcast. That is a podcast dedicated to all screens. It's really just movie and TV screens. I don't know why we say all screens, because we don't talk about phones at all. We've never talked about a phone. Not once. Let's see. We just recently did a review of Ernest Scared Stupid. If you are a child of the 90s, you may or may not know about that movie. That's pretty much what we're dedicated to now, is just 90s crap. If you do want to find me, I do write mostly on our X platform, formerly known as Twitter. You can find us at Screen Test Pod.
Oh. It's weird. I'm just used to
That was the biggest gulp of water, too.
It wasn't water, Aaron.
Or whatever it was. I couldn't see
PBR.
it because the purple is all there. But I love how it just goes silent. You say, gook.
I mean, I was just
Jeez.
waiting for, usually Andrew just goes on and on, and you kind of just came to a full stop. I'm still waiting for you guys to do the Nicolas Cage episode. I can't even think of the name of the movie now. The one where he never says a word.
You've
fantastic.
You've
movie.
recommended that movie. We will be doing Andrew's suggestion here with Suburban Commando. With Hulk Hogan featuring Hulk Hogan.
That's hard to pass up.
We will be reviewing that film not on our next episode, but on the episode after that. We kind of want to get through Halloween, so we want to do some Halloween focused episodes before we get to that. But
I mean,
we will. I
this
think we
is a
will.
Halloween focused episode. It is him murdering puppets.
That is a good
It's
point.
Willy's Wonderland.
Willy's Wonderland. Yeah.
Yes. Fantastic movie.
That would be a good horror one, but I think you could do, when it's Nick Cage, it doesn't matter if he's doing a horror film. You could literally review that.
That could be
at
a
any
Christmas Day review.
Yeah, you really could.
You could do National Treasure. That's kind of a horror film.
Every day's a National Treasure in Nicolas Cage. Yeah, I don't know. So that's been me. That's who I am. Because I've been on this podcast.
All right, everyone. Okay. Anyway. All right, everyone. We love you all. We'll see you again next week.
Bye.
See ya.